All right, so we're gonna take the engine apart, do an inspection, see what we need. I've got my trusty navigator there with the workshop manual. The goal is to not break it, get it apart, and find out what we need to put it back together. I've got a machine shop already. Do the work on the head, the valves. Pretty much gonna go do everything. We're just gonna make sure we don't have any problems with it. So full rebuild. Fix any problems we find. All right, well, let's get taking it apart. All right, so we started taking things apart. We've got the water manifold, or where the water comes out in the top. And then we're taking off what we assume is a water pump. We've taken out 2 bolts here. The shorter one is at the top. The longer one is down at the bottom. One thing we've noted is oil. I think you can see that oil is coming out of this hole at least, and maybe this one up here. We did turn the engine upside down on the engine stand, so that might have something to do with it, but I'm worried that maybe something there is cracked. So we'll see what we get down to the bottom. And then on this side there's 2 nuts, and then there is this thing that may be a belt tensioner, not really sure. It's held on by a nut here, and there's just enough room to get it out. So we'll finish taking this off and then move on. I think we're probably gonna go with timing chain cover, and then maybe start on the head. The rapidly disappearing engine, or at least I wish it would rapidly. So here's the water pump. Pretty basic. See a little what would account for veins in there. That goes down into the engine and spins in that waterway. So there is oil coming out of multiple bolt holes, which is I mean, that's strange, but there's no oil in any of the water areas. And then if you look in the back, so I just took this off. That gasket is certainly junk, but all this area is just looks like somebody didn't flush the coolant system at all. But there's no oil in it. Some oil came out of that screw, but there's nothing in this area, so I guess that's still good. The other concern was, and I guess this is probably a newbie mistake, but we rolled the engine over earlier on the stand to take the sump off, the pan off, which obviously wasn't going to work because you can see that we're attached to that. So then we rolled it back up. I thought I might take a compression check, so I went to turn the engine over, and it doesn't turn over anymore. So I guess not supposed to roll it over. I've taken the head bolts off, and you see the head is sprung up a little bit, so I guess it's ready to come off. And I take the valves off as well. It's going along fairly well. And I get the oil filter unit off as well, and then we'll get maybe to the timing chain cover and start breaking the rest of the block down. By that time, it should be light enough we can take it apart off of the engine stand. All right, we got our head off. That was about as painless head removal as I think I've done. I don't even think a lawnmower engine was quite that easy. Looks pretty good. It turns over easily now. I think the issue was, and when I said it didn't turn over, I meant that the resistance I felt was, not normal. Not that it just wouldn't turn over. I think there was a lot, I've blown this off, there was a lot of corrosion and buildup in this area. And I think that just kind of was blocking it, because these were at TDC. When I pulled this apart, it was just like this. Like I said, it rotates freely now. So I'm gonna go with just that. I don't think there was anything in the bottom that did it. Let's see if the light will come on. All right, well, let me spin over and we'll look at the head on the other side. All right, so here's the head, and you can see, I think maybe a little bit of a head gasket leak. Because you see you got the front two, I haven't cleaned these or blown anything off or whatnot. They're just a normal oil carbon buildup. And you know, obviously it needs a ring job, but that's nothing new. Number one looks probably really good. Number two, you had a lot of gunk on that valve. 3 and 4. And based on the color on that, I think there's probably a little bit of a head gasket leak. I haven't really seen anything particular on the head or the gasket. I mean, it looks pretty tight, but I think that's probably what that was. And it, you know, could well have happened after this had been taken apart. I mean, the exhaust manifold, intake manifold haven't been on in goodness, you know, maybe 30 years plus. But all in all, it looks really good. So I'm certainly happy about that. Let me turn the light on the camera and let's look inside the cylinders real well. All right, let's see. Okay, here we go. You can see pretty down there pretty good. Hit your normal stuff right at the top. All right, so that's number one. Number two, let me stop this and I'll reach down and turn that and get them down. Well, let's look at 4 first. All right, get down in there. All right. I hope everybody got their motion sickness bag before I started this. All right, I'll rotate this and we'll look at 2 and 3. All right, there's 2. The oil streaks coming down from when it was at the top. There's 3. Well, I mean, I've certainly seen a lot worse. That streak looks like it goes clear down there. Certainly the Mets is much worse than this, so I don't think these will need to be sleeved. I can just get them bored. It depends, you know, hopefully it hasn't been bored before. But, you know, we counted on that. I mean, that was certainly something we were going to do anyway. So just wanted to make sure it wasn't something worse than that. Did note oil was coming out of this one. You can see a little bit in there. It's not coming out through into the cylinder, so that's good. Could well be a design. Could well be how they have it. All right, take time to cover off. Oil filter unit, and then I think I might be able to reposition the stand on the back so that we can turn this over and then pull the pan off. Got the timing chain cover off. Got an interesting way they do this. They call this the white link. It really just sort of looks aluminum rather than black. You can see it has a T on it, and then there's a T there on the gear. If you look down the crankshaft, you can see this is also a white link with a T on it and a T there. It gave me a fright the first time I checked this. I saw this in the workshop manual. If you rotate this around a couple times, even the next time around, they're not going to line up. They're not going to be anywhere close. And then if you do it one more time, then it's one link off. So I don't quite understand that. I'm going to count, they said to count the links between them. I'll go ahead and count those and make sure they're right, just to verify. Right, so I counted the links on the chain. You got the 2 white links, and then you have 13 black links on the short side, and then 15 on the long side. And then you can see you've got this lines up with the T and with another T. What I don't understand is that if you spin it a couple times, it'll line up with them one off. So for the sake of remembering this, I'm gonna go, as you see the gear here, and you see this this marking right here, okay? And then if you look down the crankshaft, you can see the keyway right out to the side, level with the top of the sump. Oil pan there. So that's how I'm going to remember it for putting it back. I'm sure there's another explanation, but I read the workshop manual, couldn't find it. So that's the way I'm going to do it right now. No more sump. All right, so I mean, it looks pretty good. You know, you always wonder why these cars get parked and someone decides to restore them. You wouldn't be surprised to see, you know, one of these cracked in half, or metal shavings all over the bottom, or, you know, piston, you know, the piston connecting rod broken out, and pistons, rings in the bottom, you know, all kinds of just chaos. So I guess whatever reason prompted this getting restored was not catastrophic engine failure. So that's very good for us. Got to check and see if this is the upgraded rear main oil seal. I don't see a whole lot of evidence of things leaking out of it, so maybe that is. All right, we'll look in the sump. So, you know, things like this are just the gasket material that fell down as I took it off. You know, it looks pretty good. I mean, there's garbage and sludge down in the bottom. That's kind of where it's supposed to be. I don't see any metal, so that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and take this part out, get it cleaned up. Then I'll finish stripping this down. I'm gonna take the head and the crank to my engine shop. We're gonna measure everything, see if we need to go undersize on the connecting rods, bearings, and whatnot, and oversize on the pistons. See what we need to do to the cylinders. I got to take this thing off too, so I guess I'll do that next. I assume that's the pump. You can see where that's driven down off the camshaft there. Also take the camshaft out and get it measured. Pretty much gonna take everything over, have him look at it, and see what we need to do from here. This apparently does not have the spin-on filter. I think I can get a little kit to replace that. I think I'm probably gonna leave it the way it is. All right, I'm gonna get this off and keep on moving. Oh, note, this is not something that you pull off. That's just the back of the crankshaft. So don't try to pull that off. I'm glad I looked at the illustration before I did, because I got tools that'll pull anything off. I would have broken that right off the back. Yeah, I get a view from this side. It's nice that this is at least counterbalanced. You know, the Metz crank, if you've seen it, it's not even counterbalanced. That was progress. All right, we'll keep on going. So if you've heard of bugs before, like a bug in a software, a bug in a computer, it's because a moth, I believe it was, flew into and got into the old transistors, the tube type, and shorted it out. And that was what brought down the first computer, so it was a bug. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but that's a bug right there in our engine. And I think this thing over a little bit to the right of him, right there in the middle of your screen, is a spider. So I guess that while this was sitting there, the distributor was taken out. So I guess little guys crawled down in there and got stuck. It's kind of funny. I'm taking off the oil pump right now. I just took off the oil filter there. And I noticed something that is an interesting detail is these two bolts had safety wire, and then they have copper washers. The rest of these have lock nuts. I'm guessing the difference is that maybe these are crush uh, washers, and that's to keep something from leaking there. So it'd be interesting to see. There's like a little. I read something about a prime port, maybe, and maybe that's what that is. So it'd be interesting to take the rest of this apart and see what that is. But really, I wanted to just put a note in there so that I didn't miss that putting these back on. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this part. Engine is ready to go to the engine shop. They will check the cylinders, see if they need to be bored. Then I'll order the pistons based on that. Check crankshaft, check the camshaft valves, all that. Likely everything will be replaced. I don't think we're going to need to replace the crank. Maybe not the camshaft, but we will if it's even close. One thing I noticed is I took out all these core plugs and look at the sediment in there, and that's not just a little dam. That's all the way back into the casting. So it's going to get hot tanked. So hopefully all that'll come out, and then of course the cooling for the engine will be a lot better. Actually has some water flow in there. All right. Well, next series or next part, we'll probably rebuild the transmission. Probably not going to get to the engine until all these parts come back, and it'll take a little while to get scheduled and get all the parts in. So we'll see you soon.